Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Alma here. In today's video, we will explore what suffering is, how it manifests in various forms, and how we can better manage moments in our lives when we feel overwhelmed or blocked by it. Today we'll discuss my own process of detaching from suffering and emotional pain through introspective awareness. At a certain point in my life, I was going through a very emotionally charged period, experiencing suffering intensely. We have all been through difficult moments where we felt lost or basically without help, hope, and vision. It felt that nothing could motivate me, nothing made sense, and nothing was worth it. Somehow, there was this dull pain in the background that persisted regardless of my daily actions. I felt like I was living on autopilot, and I wasn't even sure if I clearly wanted to be happy or not. Later on, I realized that subconsciously we can develop attachments to suffering. Click the link in the description to learn more about the attachments we can form regarding emotional pain. Many of us probably don't believe we deserve to be happy and continue to spin in the same vicious cycle that leads to self-sabotage and the amplification of suffering. Suffering is relative. We all experience it based on our tolerance levels, and the illusion is that some of us experience it more intensely while others suffer less. In reality, the truth is that for each of us, suffering is the greatest. It's our own, right? So what is important is not to measure how much we suffer compared to others, but to decide what to do about it, how we relate to this inner pain, to this void. There are two general approaches that people have towards suffering. Those who break down because they can't cope or try to cope with suffering in ways that really deepen it, and those who manage their own suffering, understand its origin and purpose in their lives, and transform one of its biggest disadvantages into lessons that form a solid foundation for their future personal development. It is essential to remember that it is strictly our choice how we relate to suffering. You may be wondering, okay, but what should we do, or what did I do? Well, I'll tell you what I did. I tried to maintain a balance between experiencing suffering, not resisting it, and at the same time realizing that I'm not my suffering. I am not my wounds. I learned to relate to suffering not as an enemy, but as a friend, as a teacher, as a master. So, what is suffering? To begin with, it is necessary to understand that the branches of suffering can extend across many aspects of our lives. Suffering can result from physical trauma, personal loss, emotional difficulties, or even illness. Emotional suffering generates psychological pain, sadness, anxiety, stress, or other emotional disorders. So, the next step for you to do is to observe your emotions. Observe the presence of the emotion and take a step back. Detach yourself from it by focusing on specific aspects such as physical sensations or visual images related to your emotion, and use these observational skills without being overwhelmed by the emotion. Just be the one who is observing, the one who can see what is happening in your life. Put yourself in that position. Then experience your emotion fully. Allow the emotion to come and go like a wave. Avoid trying to resist it, as this can amplify suffering. Don't resist the emotion, but also try to not hold into it either. Stop the temptation to dwell too much on the emotion or intensify it repeatedly. Let it be as it is without making it more intense. Remember, you're not your emotion. So acknowledge that the emotion is a part of you, not your entire identity. The presence of an emotion does not require immediate attention or action. Sit with the emotion without feeling the need to act right away. Remember moments when you felt differently to underline the idea that emotions are temporary. So for example, when happiness comes your way, right? You are experiencing that happiness or that ecstasy, but it lasts only for a certain amount of time. It's the same with negative emotions or emotional suffering. It lasts for a period of time, but then if you don't cling into that, you will see that this will go away. Then later on it might come back. Just because you haven't addressed the exact trauma that is coming to the surface in the moment when you feel that emotion. So try to respect and love your emotions. Develop a practice of loving your emotions, even the painful ones. Avoid judgment. Do not see emotions as good or bad. They just simply exist. Understand that the feeling of anger, fear, or sadness does not define you, and it's not something negative. It's just a reaction to a factor that brought something to the surface, as I said. So adopt an openness to experience and radically accept your emotions. Speak with tenderness to both yourself and your emotions. These steps are designed to help you navigate and release painful emotions, promoting awareness, acceptance, and a compassionate attitude towards yourself. So acceptance of suffering is a very important part, as over time, us and our ancestors have been conditioned by certain ingrained programs, especially if you're a man, but not only. If you have been programmed from a very young age that it's not okay to cry, to show your emotions or feelings, God forbid to show vulnerability, we receive this set of masks at fragile ages to at least show on the surface that we are okay, that we can, that we don't need anyone or anything, that we are strong, right? And now, in adulthood, social media instills the same values through perfect lives that we see on Instagram or Facebook, bodies, relationships, and experiences presented there. It's challenging in such a context to even admit that we are not okay, to be vulnerable, or if anyone around us is not really making an exercise of showing their vulnerabilities to us, how can we do that? Because we would feel that we would lose if we would be vulnerable in front of someone. If as a child you didn't even have the chance to experience the emotions fully, and basically you can't manage them even now, then it's very possible that you don't even realize what you feel or what discomfort you feel. Maybe you don't even know that you are suffering, but you just integrated suffering as part of your being, and you just move on, and you go through it, and you think this is life, or that's how life is supposed to be. But no. So the first and most important step, probably the most difficult one, is to accept and truly want to see what is there. I say difficult because this process will obviously bring certain things from your childhood and previous experiences to the surface where you felt or blocked that suffering. Now, pause this video and think, what is your reaction when you feel the suffering? What defense mechanisms do you see appearing? When was the first time in your life that you remember suffering? So the first time when you experienced suffering since you were a child, what you remember? And what about the last time when you experienced suffering? Make a comparison between the two. Only in this way we can begin to be introspective when we observe ourselves. You may be wondering, okay, but what should we do now? Well, basically, perception is very important as well, the way you see things. So, according to the dictionary, right, the definition of perception is that is a mental process of sensory knowledge through which objects and phenomena are reflected as a whole. What does it mean? Well, it means that the perception in this process by which we interpret and understand the information received from the surrounding environment, which could be also suffering, it is basically relative. So it's just the way our brain interprets sensory signals to form a representation of the external world. And it's very important to mention that perception does not always reflect the objective reality, since it is influenced by cognitive processes, previous experiences, and individual factors. More precisely, we can feel in a certain way, but due to our filters, we can perceive something as a tragedy or as more than it really is. Our perception of suffering is strictly limited by our level of awareness. Self-love is another very important aspect in this process. You can find this video about self-love in the link in the description below. So, guys, let's spread positive energy towards everything that brings discomfort into our lives and transform it into something that helps us to become the best version of ourselves. I know you can do it too. If I managed to do it, yes, you can do it as well. So, crack on, guys, and start observing yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.